I didn't know a truth could sit in your mouth like a burn you keep tonguing, but this one does. I helped my best friend run away, and she was running from my own brother. It sounds like a headline you scroll past, too dramatic to be real, but I live inside it. I carry it from morning to night, a quiet weight behind my ribs. Some days it feels like armor. Some days it feels like a bruise that won't decide whether to fade. Her name is Layla, and I've known her since we were 6, two little girls hiding under banquet tables at a wedding where the grown-ups smelled like rosewater and impatience. She poured juice on her dress to match my accident and declared us a team. That was her magic. She didn't fix your mess. She stepped into it with you until it didn't feel like shame, just a story you'd laugh about later. We learned everything in tandem: how to jump rope without whacking our ankles, how to braid each other's hair tight enough to last through PE, how to tell when someone liked you and when they just liked how you made them feel about themselves. We practiced mischief and mercy in equal measure. When life handed us unfairness before we had the words to name it, we shared the unfairness like sisters share the last mango slice. My brother Ryan is 4 years older than me and grew up surrounded by yes. He is the kind of person who looks like he was assembled by an architect. Straight lines, good angles, the right kind of stillness. Teachers used him as an example. Aunties made jokes about saving their daughters for him, even before the daughters were old enough to know if they liked boys. He is both softer and harder than he appears, which is how charm often disguises control. Ryan never learned the difference between being respected and being obeyed because too many people mistook one for the other in front of him. Layla and Ryan were background characters in each other's lives for years, passing in hallways, exchanging occasional courtesies when our families collided the way satellites do. Close enough to nod, far enough to forget. Then one evening after exams, when the city hummed with the relief of kids who'd survived multiple choice questions pretending to measure their intelligence, he brought us ice cream without being asked. A little awkward, a little proud. Layla smiled at him in that bright, mischievous way and said, "I won't trust a man who doesn't order pistachio at least once." He ordered pistachio the next time, of course. They started texting about music and memes and philosophy in the lazy late-night manner of two people who still believe their days are infinite. I noticed, but noticing didn't feel like a duty yet. I was happy for them the way people are happy at first because the world is small and joy looks good on people you love. It was slow then fast. He picked her up for campus events, she brought him coffee for interviews. They kissed like the future was watching and would be kind. Layla told me everything the way she always had, only softer now. As if a new vulnerability had sprouted behind her tongue, and she didn't want to scare it. When she said he told her he loved her, she smiled like someone who had discovered a new room in a house she'd lived in forever. I wanted to be the kind of sister who trusted her brother and the kind of friend who trusted her friend, so I tried to be both at once. The first shift was tiny, a half-degree change in her laugh. It happened after he made a joke about a dress she wore. "Beautiful, but you don't need to show everyone what's mine." He said it lightly in a room crowded with cousins and music and the friendly chaos of a family party, and she shrugged like it was a compliment. Later, in my room while we took off the earrings that had been pinching our lobes raw, she asked casual, "Do you think this top is too much?" Layla had never asked that question in her life. I shook my head too quickly. She wore a cardigan the next time anyway. Then came the thing with her friends. He didn't like one of them, a girl who smokes clove cigarettes and speaks in questions that are really opinions. "She's a bad influence," he said, and Layla laughed like I am immune to influence and changed the subject. But that week she ignored 2 of the girls' calls. The following week she muted the group chat. "It's not because of him," she said when I asked, and I believed her because I wanted to. We all want to believe it will be okay until it isn't. Until you're sitting on the floor of a bathroom at a birthday party, and your best friend is dabbing more concealer on top of concealer under her eye, and saying she didn't sleep well. Until you notice a bruise on her forearm shaped like someone else's impatience. Until she insists the cabinet door hit her, and you can hear the inside of your chest say, "No, it didn't." Until you become the kind of person who notices everything and says almost nothing because you're afraid that calling a thing by its true name will summon it more fully. The first time I confronted him, I tried to sound like a sister and not like a prosecutor. I asked him how things were going, and then, because he is a human lie detector when he wants to be, I asked if he was happy. He said, "I'm happiest when I know where I stand." Sounded like a philosophy. Later I realized it was a demand. I said, Layla loves you. As if love is a leash that makes men gentle. He said. I picked her. Like love was a trophy he'd won in a fair contest. I left the conversation feeling itchy like a shirt with the tag still on, scratching a place I couldn't reach. Things accelerated the way avalanches do. Slow slide, sudden roar. Layla began to apologize for existing. She apologized when my phone was on silent and she called twice. She apologized when she laughed too loud in a cafe, when a waiter noticed her, when a male cousin complimented her shoes. You're not in trouble, I told her once, and she looked at me with eyes that had forgotten what safety looks like when it lives in your body. I know, she said and didn't. When I hugged her I could feel alertness under her skin. The way animals tense for a noise they have learned to fear. Then there was the night she arrived at my house without calling. She smelled like wind and panic. She sat on my bed and mouthed, "Don't tell anyone," when she heard my parents in the hall. We waited until the house settled. She showed me her wrist and the purple blooming there. We were arguing, she whispered. He grabbed me to stop me from leaving. She said it like she was telling me how she almost missed a bus. I pressed my lips together so the scream wouldn't invite itself out. He cried afterward, she added quickly, as if I needed the footnote. He said he was scared I'd walk away and he'd lose me. She wanted me to say something that would hold the world in place. I didn't know how to do that anymore. I said, "You can sleep here." She did. I didn't. After that night I started collecting phone numbers. It felt like hoarding matches in a house that pretends it will never be dark. A women's shelter 2 districts away. A legal aid hotline. The number of a counselor whose face I recognized from a poster in a clinic. I didn't know if Layla would ever ask for help. I didn't know if I would be brave enough to offer it. But I wanted the numbers in my phone. A quiet rebellion in my contact list. Proof to myself that planning is a form of love. Ryan noticed my new posture, if not my new plan. He started testing me. "You don't think I'm a bad guy, do you?" he asked, half-smile pinned to his face like a medal. "No," I said, which was true in the way weather forecasts are true. "Some days yes, some days no, most days maybe." "You're intense," I added. "That's not a crime." He laughed and kissed my hair like I was still the little sister who worshipped him. I hated my own tenderness. I loved my old brother. I grieved the man standing in front of me who was not entirely new, and not entirely the boy I knew. I started keeping 2 truths in my mouth at once. He is kind. He is cruel. He is mine. He is not safe. The night Layla decided to leave happened without announcement. It was only Wednesday and the sky had that sharp winter blue that makes you think the world is clean because the air is. We were at campus, pretending to study and succeeding at nothing. She stared at the same paragraph so long the letters seemed to sigh. "If I stay," she said without looking at me, "I will become smaller every week until I can fit into his pocket. He will call that love. Everyone will clap." She turned the page and didn't read it. "If I go, I will lose everything I don't really have." She looked up. "Will you help me?" My yes was ready before the question. It rolled out of me like breathing. We set a date for a week later, gave it a name we wouldn't forget, our joke to trick fate into letting us have it. Mango. We packed little because movies lie about what you need to run. 1 backpack, a folder of documents I made copies of at a shop whose owner doesn't ask questions, a spare phone I bought secondhand in cash, a scarf that could be a blanket, a toothbrush because dignity lives in small habits. I taught her my trick of folding money into the hem of a t-shirt. She taught me how to hold fear so it doesn't shake your hands in public. When the day came, the city looked indifferent. Markets shouted their normal chaos. Buses shrugged past. A woman argued with a fruit seller about the honest weight of guavas. I wanted the sky to lower itself and bless us or warn us. It did neither. Layla told her parents she was sleeping at my house for a study sprint. I told mine the same because sometimes the truth is too complicated to fit inside a single sentence. We met at the corner near the pharmacy where the owner nods at me like he knows my blood type. We didn't hug because we were trying to look like 2 women who have nothing to hide. We almost made it out without singing. The universe sent Ryan to my front door like a cruel punctuality. He showed up with the key he never returned from childhood when my mother still asked him to check on me. He called my name, then stepped inside the way men do when houses have always welcomed them. Layla went silent so quickly I heard the breath snap back in her throat. I tried to be that teenage girl again, the one who could lie for both of us in one smooth story. It didn't work. He saw the second backpack. He saw our shoes by the door. He saw the way I stood like a door that has decided to be a wall. It wasn't a movie. There was no beautiful speech. There was a man whose face couldn't decide between pleading and fury. There was a woman whose fear had stopped shaking and calcified into choice. There was me, the sister who had run out of ways to be both. He kept his voice low at first. He has always known how to perform calm. Where are you going? Nowhere. Together. Yes. No, that was when he turned. He accused and begged in the same sentence. You can't do this to me and please don't do this to me. He listed all the ways he had been good to her like a receipt. He said she owed him trying. He said I owed him loyalty. I heard my heartbeat in my ears and the shaking of the window in the wind and the small steady voice I had been practicing for months. She doesn't belong to you. He reached for her arm like a reflex and the look she gave me will live under my skin forever. The look of a person who has asked for help and is checking to see if help is just another word for delay. I stepped between them. My body did the math of hallway and human and home. Walk away, I told him. We will leave. Or call the police. But we will leave. He blinked like I had slapped him, then saw the phone in my hand and realized I meant it, and the last boy in him panicked. You're destroying our family, he said, and he meant all the little legends he had assembled around himself. The dutiful son, the charming brother, the man who made good choices. I'm saving mine, I said, and I meant the part of me that would never forgive us if we stayed. He left because he didn't know what else to do. He left because rage is cowardly when witnesses might arrive. He left and the door slammed and the house trembled and Layla slid down the wall to the floor and sobbed once, then stood. We did not look back. We walked to the bus stop and bought tickets with cash and sat near the back and didn't speak for 3 stops, then 5, then 10. At some point Layla leaned her head on my shoulder the way you do when sleep is stronger than dignity. At some point I checked the reflection in the window to see if we looked like criminals. We looked like women. The shelter was a square, kind building with posters that had been up too long and chairs that held stories better than people. The woman at the desk had soft hands and a firm voice. She took Layla's name and then gave her a new one for the system like a talisman. I stayed through intake because sometimes bravery requires an audience you trust. We sat with a counselor in a small room full of tissues in silence. Layla spoke, halting at first, then not. She used words she had learned to avoid. Control, jealous, scared, grabbed, apology, again. I watched her face rearrange itself as she put the facts in order, and saw a shape neither of us could ignore. When it was over, the counselor looked at me and nodded as if I had performed a surgery. You did the right thing, she said. I cried then, embarrassingly, which is to say honestly. Doing the right thing does not feel like triumph. It feels like relief and grief arguing in your bloodstream. I left her there that night because safety sometimes looks like separation. On the bus home, the city seemed both too bright and too dark. At the stoplight, a boy offered me a single rose wrapped in plastic. I shook my head and he smiled like I had tipped him anyway. When I walked in, my mother's face wore the expression mothers invent when they know their children are not telling them everything, and they have decided to love them anyway. Eat, she said, and I ate because ritual is a way to convince your body it can continue. Ryan didn't come home that night. He texted my father to say he was staying with a friend. My father's responses were calm, which is his way of living in the world without breaking anything important. The next day the texts began. The distant relatives with moral microscopes, the family friends who confuse gossip with concern, the cousins who have never found a boundary they didn't want to jump over like a fence. Where is she? Is it true? I thought they were in love? Someone said she ran off with another man. Someone said you helped. Someone said you're the reason. I put my phone face down and listened to the kettle hiss. The week after was paperwork and small battles. Replacing a SIM, setting up a P.O. box for Layla through the shelter, opening a bank account that would not give our secret away through paper sent to her parents' place. I memorized the faces of the staff who used their soft power for girls like us and promised myself I would remember their names. Ryan sent me a message that said simply why? I typed and deleted 100 answers. Because she asked. Because you hurt her. Because I would rather be a traitor to your legend than a traitor to her bones. Because love without air is not love. It is possession in a prettier coat. I wrote nothing and pressed nothing and went for a walk because my therapist, one of the numbers I finally called, said movement helps emotion find a door. We tried for a restraining order. It is both easier and harder than movies tell you. Easier because sometimes the system remembers women exist. Harder because men who are good at smiling are also good at sounding reasonable to paper. The hearing was in a narrow room where tired people tried to be fair. I wore clothes that made me look like I trusted myself. Layla spoke. She did not tremble on the important words. The judge believed enough to sign. I exhaled and felt my lungs greet each other like old friends. Ryan didn't show. His lawyer did. He asked questions like puzzles designed to make you doubt your own edge pieces. After outside, the sky was absurdly lovely, which felt like an insult and a blessing. We ate falafel on a curb and laughed because salt tastes like victory when you haven't had any in a while. Layla found a job at a small bakery that smells like cinnamon apology. She learned how to wake at 4 and fold dough with a kindness that made bread taste like it remembered our grandmothers. She found a room to rent with a door that locks and a window that forgives. She sent me a photo of a plant on her sill and wrote he's still alive, and I wrote back him too? And she sent 5 laughing faces and then 1 crying face, and we both allowed the day to continue. At home, the air around Ryan rearranged itself. He was polite and distant, the way people are at funerals when they cannot name the deceased. He acted like a citizen of our family, paying his small taxes in conversation, fulfilling basic obligations of sonhood, and never looking anyone in the eye long enough to invite truth. My mother asks me sometimes, not in words but in the way she holds a cup, whether I will fix any of this. I cannot. Love is not an on-call electrician. There was a wedding in the family months later, an event so large it could have its own weather system. Layla and I had always danced at weddings like we were beating back a tide. Now I arrived in a dress that did not ask for attention, and sat where the light was kind to people who didn't want to be seen. Ryan was there in navy and discomfort. Our cousins circled him like bees that could not decide whether to sting or make honey. A girl I barely know came and sat beside me and said, "You're brave," in the tone people use when they're not sure if they are complimenting your courage or warning themselves of your contagion. I said, "No, I am practicing," and she smiled like I had handed her a spell. Later, when the music grew loud, I went outside and found my father sitting on a step, tie loosened, shoes off, looking at the moon like it owed him rent. "You okay?" he asked without looking at me. "No," I said. "Good," he replied. "Stay honest." We sat like that for a long time, 2 people who love him and each other and someone else far away, allowing the night to tell us nothing new. Ryan and I finally fought. Not the polite skirmishes we'd had before. A real fight, the kind that leaves the room tired. He accused me of choosing a stranger over blood. I told him blood is not a guarantee. It is an opportunity. He said I embarrassed him. I said he embarrassed himself. He said I had ruined his life. I said I had interrupted a life he was ruining. He said I didn't know what it felt like to fear being abandoned. I said that is not an excuse to hold someone by the throat. He cried angrily because men think tears make their apologies heavier. I didn't. "You can become better," I said finally, because hope is an involuntary reflex. "Or you can become harder. That choice is yours. I can't make it for you and I won't be crushed by it either way." He looked at me and I saw, for a small flicker, the boy who let me have the last piece of cake at birthdays. Then the flicker went out. He left the room. I let him. Weeks turned into a season. Layla and I invented a new way to be best friends that included not speaking every day, which felt like betrayal until we realized it was growth. She told her parents eventually, in pieces, using the kind of sentences you have to practice in front of a mirror. They did not believe her at first because believing required them to take a truth and smash their favorite myth with it. But truths are stubborn. Her mother cried not because her daughter had suffered, but because her idea of safety had been wrong. Her father apologized to me for my brother without saying his name, which is as much apology as some men can utter without their tongues nodding. Layla told me they are learning. I told her learning is love in work clothes. I started volunteering at the shelter, which is to say I showed up and made tea and stapled forms and learned that stapling forms can feel like putting spines back into books that deserve to stand on their own. I sat with girls who were not girls and women who were still learning how to be women on their own terms. I said very little. I handed over my phone with the right numbers saved. I learned how to listen until someone hears themselves. I learned that leaving is an action you have to do again and again, even after you have packed a bag and closed a door. There were setbacks. One night Layla called from her tiny kitchen whispering because panic had learned how to mimic her voice. A car had idled outside too long. Footsteps had sounded like memory. I went over with a ridiculous weapon, a rolling pin, and sat on her floor and ate toast with too much butter, and we laughed like it was our job, and the fear took a break because fear too gets tired. Another time, she saw a man in line at the bakery with Ryan's shoulders and couldn't breathe. She texted me, "It's amazing how a body you used to love can become a shape you scan for like a threat." I wrote back, "You're not wrong. Also breathe. Also drink water. Also I love you." She wrote, "In that order?" I wrote, "Any order." He threatened legal action once. He didn't follow through because his lawyer must have told him there is discovery, and discovery is when the stories you've arranged carefully knock on each other's doors and ask for proof. He dated again. It ended. He posted a photo of a mountain with a caption about climbing alone. The likes were plentiful. The comments were admiring. I muted him because my piece does not need that kind of poetry. People ask if I forgive him. They ask if Layla does. They ask like they're shopping for an ending that fits their preferred genre. I tell them forgiveness is furniture. You can sit on it when you're ready. Right now I stand more than I sit. I don't hate him. Hate would require a daily appointment I don't have time to keep. I don't absolve him either. Accountability is not cruelty. It is the price of being allowed to join us in the future. I met someone in the middle of all this, which feels tangential until you realize healing gives you new eyes for love. His name is Ferris, and he makes documentaries about small things that matter, like the last vicious repairman in a market and a woman who sells plants from her balcony and keeps a notebook of which neighbor's window the afternoon light prefers. He listens to me the way people listen to instructions for defusing. He doesn't try to fix my sentences. He asks what I need and then believes me when I answer. When I told him about Layla and Ryan, he didn't call me brave or dramatic. He said, "You picked the right person." And I cried because that is not what I had been telling myself. I had been saying, "You betrayed your brother to save your friend." He changed the verb. Pick. Chose. He reminded me that betrayal is sometimes only the name the guilty give to a refusal to conspire. My mother and I had the talk I had been avoiding one afternoon while folding laundry, which is when women tell each other the things they cannot bear to say at the table. She said she was proud of me and also that her chest hurt every time my brother's shoes were by the door and he was not. She said she did not raise him to be this, and she did not raise me to be the instrument of his lesson either, and yet life had handed us both roles we did not audition for. She said marriage is not a wall to hide behind. It is a room you choose to clean every day. She said she wished someone had told her that earlier. We cried into clean shirts and laughed at ourselves and made tea and sat under the fan like women do when the weather refuses to be merciful. One night, nearly a year after Mango Day, as Layla and I still call it in private, Ryan knocked on my door. He did not come in. He looked older in the way grief ages men who haven't named it out loud. He said he was in therapy. I said good. He said he did not do the thing he wanted to do most, which was to say he was sorry and have me hand him back the version of himself he misses. I said good again. He said he wanted to tell me he knows he is dangerous when he is scared. I said knowing is not enough, and he nodded the way people nod when they are trying to stop themselves from arguing with a fact. He asked me if I am happy. I said sometimes. He said me too. He looked at his shoes and said, "You saved her." I said, "I chose her." He said, "Over me." I said, "Over the you who was hurting her." He nodded again, and the night made a small sound as if it had shifted its weight. Layla came to dinner at my parents' house for the first time since she left. We did it like a secret at first, early simple food, the TV on to give everyone something to look at when words got too brave. My mother hugged her for too long. My father asked her if she still likes too much lemon on everything and she said yes, and he went to cut another one. We talked about small things that mattered. Recipes, the woman down the lane who has finally stopped spying, the new shop with tea so strong it could stand on its own. We did not talk about him. We did not have to. He was in the house the way weather is always somewhere. The knowledge that storms exist even when the day is clear. When she left, my mother sent her home with food because love is often curry in a container you must return. We stood at the gate and watched her get into a car with a driver who is a cousin of someone at the shelter, and whose face is kind in the small rearview mirror. I thought, we are building a city inside this city where women can make it from door to door without borrowing a man's permission. There will be no movie ending to hand you. No grand gesture where my brother kneels outside Layla's window and begs, and she forgives and the credits roll and the audience sighs with relief because they did not pay to be taught about consequences. I have only this. A life that continues. Days that stack the way plates do after dinner. Work that matters because it is small and repeated. A best friend who laughs again, the big laugh, the one that sounds like rebellion. A brother learning to call his fear by its name without giving it the keys. A mother who is becoming softer in the right places and stricter in the right places. A father who knows silence can be either complicity or comfort, and is practicing picking the second more often. If you are sitting somewhere with your phone lighting your face and a truth burning your tongue, if you are the sister who loves a brother and a friend and cannot find a way to love them both without breaking something, if you are the person who keeps searching the internet for stories that will tell you what to do, I cannot give you a template. I can give you this. The body knows before the mind agrees. The first no you feel is the true one. Pick the person who is not being believed. Pick her even if your hands shake. Pick her even if the house you grew up in has to rearrange its furniture to make space for that choice. Pick her and then build a path for her feet, and then, if you have energy, make tea and drink it on the floor because floors will remind you that survival is a ground-level miracle. Sometimes at night I dream we are six again under the wedding table, watching shoes go by, stealing sweets, giggling at the ankles of adults who keep telling us to be careful with our dresses. In the dream my brother is there too, smaller. Not yet tangled inside the terrible definitions of love we hand to boys like trophies, possession, pride, proof. We all sit cross-legged and Layla pours juice on her dress so I don't feel alone. I wake up smiling and then the world returns and I do what life asks. I get up. I brush my teeth. I water a plant that still leans towards the window like hope. I pack a lunch in a box that says, "Take care," in a font that wants to be my friend. I go to the shelter and the bakery and the market and I do my tiny part in the enormous work of making safety less conditional. And sometimes on the bus when the driver hits a bump and everyone sways together, I look around at all the strangers and love them a little because we are here, all of us, carrying our headlines quietly. Helped her run, left him, stayed too long, left too soon, told the truth, couldn't, tried again. I think about how the city would sound if we read them out loud. I think about how it would shine. I think about how my brother is not the worst thing he has done and my best friend is not the worst thing done to her, and I am not the worst moment of my courage or my fear. I think about how we went to the bus stop that day named Mango and how the world did not bless us but it did not stop us either, and how sometimes that is enough permission to begin. Then I ring the bell and stand and walk toward the door as it opens, and I hold my hand out to steady the person beside me not because they need it, but because it is a beautiful habit to keep.